This is Yair Davidiy speaking to you from the land of Israel. Today we are going to discuss a point concerning Judah and also concerning the 10 tribes. We find the 10 tribes amongst Western nations. Our organization, Brit-Am, Hebrew nations, researches the whereabouts of the lost tribes, and that is where we will locate them amongst Western peoples. And this fact, this evidence that we have, these proofs of where the lost 10 tribes are, needs to be known and needs to be propagated and needs to be put in action. And also we ourselves have to put it in action. We have to apply it to our daily lives and help to spread the knowledge. So one of the points that we have to deal with is prejudice, of our own inner prejudices and the prejudices of others against us, and the prejudices caused by others, or that are liable to arise through the preconceived notions of others. And just to give you I'll relate an anecdote which to illustrate the point. In my early years in Israel, I now live in Israel, so when I first came to Israel, I encountered two doctors. We had a talk and discussed prejudice in general, anti-Semitism everywhere throughout the world. One of the doctors related that when he was in Italy learning medicine, at that time was the custom for many Israelis who wanted to learn to become doctors to go to Italy. So he's learning in Italy, and with him there was another student from one of the Balkan areas. The Balkans are just to the east of Italy, it's close by. A lot of refugees, a lot of people from the Balkans come to Italy, move to Italy, or they go to Italy to learn medicine. So you had one of these people from the Balkan areas, Romania, Bulgaria, what was once Yugoslavia, Croatia, Slovenia, Slovakia, or Kosovo, all that area is considered the Balkan area. And the people, there's some similarities, even though they hate each other, they're quite similar in many ways to each other. And so he had a certain student learning or working alongside himself from one of these regions, and this person encountered others from a neighbouring area to himself, and he had to treat them and to work with them, and he met them at a professional level, and he was convinced that these people, a good portion of these people, the people in question, had tails like monkeys. He had never actually seen anyone with a tail. It just, ever since he was a child, he had been told that these people had tails. Everyone where he was, it was a common belief, and he had absorbed this belief, and he had internalized it, and he couldn't, never got rid of it, even though he had seen evidence to the contrary. And he was an intelligent, educated person learning medicine. He still believed this preconceived superstition. So this is an extreme example, but in some ways we are all like that. We all have any superstitions, we all have preconceived notions that are in some cases wrong, in some cases harmful, and we have to be aware of it, and we have to be aware of it in others, and aware of it in ourselves. So still, those people who believe in the lost 10 tribes, the lost 10 tribes amongst Western nations, sometimes you will encounter prejudice from others. People don't like hearing this belief, for all different reasons. One of the reasons people don't believe it, or don't want to believe it, or be associated with it, is because lowlives or anti-Semites, people who hate Jews, have taken it over, or have introduced it into their own movements, or into their own organizations. They believe in it, and it has become associated with anti-Jewish beliefs. It should in effect be a way for Judah, the Jewish people, and the 10 tribes to come closer together. This belief should be a pathway to a reconciliation between the two parties. But in effect it has become a dividing element because of the others who have taken it over, or have misapplied it, or have inserted their own prejudices against the Jews within it. So this is what we have to face up with, this is what we are faced with, and this is what we should be aware of, and we have to become closer to Judah. This is those of the lost 10 tribes who know this truth, who know that they are from the lost tribes, have to seek to become closer to Judah, or at least to internalize this knowledge concerning themselves and concerning Judah as being two parts of the one whole brother entities of the one Israelite nation. So one of the prejudices that you will hear against the Jews, or one out of many, but it's worthwhile knowing the answers to all of them, or to at least to some of them, to knowing the answers, using the answers. So one of the prejudices that we heard was a claim that the Jews throughout history have been expelled from every country they were in. The Jews have been expelled from 58 countries in the course of their history. And the imputation was that since the Jews have been kicked out of every place they were in, therefore there must be something wrong with them to elicit this response from the host nations. In other words, the victim, this is a common phenomenon amongst certain peoples, that they blame the victim. Blame the victim for being the victim of criminal elements. Blame the victim for having existed. Blame the victim for having been vulnerable enough to be victimized. And maybe we all have this automatic reaction. Who knows? I've seen it in a lot of cases. And if we open our eyes, maybe we ourselves have unconsciously applied it. So this is, first of all, it's a bad trait. Get rid of it. We should not blame the victim. Secondly, using this same knowledge, the nations in question throughout history, when we take a historical perspective, we see that these peoples also suffered. They suffered from their own rulers. The rulers oppressed them, enslaved them, robbed them, mistreated them throughout the course of their history. Or they fought against each other, they killed each other, they did wicked things to each other. In fact, if you look at it this way, relatively speaking, the Jews were well off. Not well off, relative compared to the Gentile nations amongst whom they lived. They lived in better conditions and were free from a lot of bad influences and bad things that happened to the other peoples. And in the course of their history, they may have been better off than the host nations were, despite here and there being suffering. What would happen, the Jews usually brought blessings. Everywhere they went, the Jews brought blessings. They brought economic prosperity, scientific knowledge, a more advanced civilization, more refined ways of behavior. Together with that, the Jews are human, and the Jews often assimilate themselves to the ways of the nations around them. They quickly learn to pick up bad habits, like all of us do, like all of our children are liable to do. And so they make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And not only that, not only do they make mistakes, but so do the Gentiles make mistakes. The Gentile nations amongst whom they live, they make mistakes. And even though the Jews are a blessing, sometimes you don't want a blessing. We all have negative influences within us. Sometimes things are too good, so we make them we make them bad. What can you do? This is the way. This is human nature. We all really regret things that we've done in our lives. We didn't know how good it was for us. So too, this happens to the Jews. The Jews stayed there, they were guests, and then they were kicked out. They got along nicely up to a certain point, and then the king didn't want them, or the church didn't want them, or the religious leaders, functionaries didn't want them, or the local people didn't want them for some reason or other, and so they began to kill them, persecute them, force them to convert to Christianity or to Islam, according to whatever was the ruling religion at the time, or they expelled them from the country. And so it happened, and they had to move elsewhere. But since, on the whole, they had been better off than they were intended after this traumatic experience of having to move to somewhere else under very negative and very adverse conditions, eventually getting by and recuperating. On the whole, they would be better off than the Gentiles, and therefore you can say that you can apply the same token to the Gentiles. If it was so bad, if the Jews were kicked out for being so bad, if they suffered everywhere for being so bad, so too the people who actually suffered more than them from their own people or from themselves, they must have been even worse. So that is the way it goes, and Isaiah 53 speaks about this, so does Isaiah 49. We'll just quote a few relevant verses concerning this subject from Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53, it says, "Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of parched ground. And then he becomes, speaking about Judah, a figure who represents Judah in the course of his exile. He has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, no appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we did not esteem him. We did not know what we had. Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried, that we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. He was, the Jew often was blamed for the faults of other people, and sometimes he had picked up the faults of other people, but the other people should have been blamed for them, but he took the blame for them. This is what happened throughout the history of the Jewish people. This goes on. He was oppressed and he was afflicted. He did not open his mouth like a lamb that is led to the slaughter. Very often he was forced to allow himself to be killed, and because he had no choice, because the whole nation was in danger. Like a lamb led to the slaughter, like a sheep that is silent before its shearers. So he did not open his mouth. And further on he will see, but in the end times he will be recompensated. God will make it up to Judah. He will give him back what he has lost, and requite him for his suffering that he suffered. And he will see his offspring. He will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. This is a promise that God has given to Judah for the end times. It says, therefore, in verse 12, I will allot him a portion with the great, and he will divide the booty with the strong. Because he poured out himself to death, he was numbered with the transgressors. The Jews often allow themselves to be killed and not to change their religion. Even in the Holocaust, when the Germans were killing Jews for racial reasons, even then, very often the Jews had, with the chance of saving their lives, or at least enhancing their chances of survival by changing their religion, and they did not do so. Even bad Jews often gave up their lives and did not renounce the faith of Judaism. They believed that God had given unto them. He says he bore them the sin of many, and he interceded with the transgressors. He himself bore the seed of many, and he interceded for the transgressors. Also we have in Isaiah 49, verse 23, concerning Judah. In the end times, Judah will be recompensated. As we said, God will make it up to him, and he will be treated better than the nations of the earth shall realize who he was and what he was for them. And the kings will be your guardians, and their princesses your nurses. They will bow down to you with their faces to the earth, and lick the dust of your feet, and you will know that I am the Lord. Those who hopefully wait for me will not be put to shame. Believe in God, and you will not be put to shame, and God will help you. The Lord God of Israel bless all of us. Thank you.